Hi, this is Linda Campbell from the Horizon Center School of Hypnotherapy. In this video, I want to show you a model of the mind that I use with my clients to describe how hypnosis works, how our belief systems are formed, and what I can do with hypnotherapy to help a client create a permanent and empowering change. So first off, what is hypnosis? Now, hypnosis just involves putting a person into an altered state of consciousness. And there's a lot of misconceptions about what hypnosis is going to feel like. People think it's going to be like being asleep or being unconscious or being unaware. Hypnosis is none of those things. Now, we actually experience trance states all the time. If you've ever zoned out while you're driving, so you're driving along, you get to your destination, but you don't remember passing certain things along the way, or maybe you miss your turnoff because you were so just off in your mind that you didn't even notice it was where you were supposed to turn. If that's ever happened to you, this is almost a universal experience, then you've actually been in a hypnotic state. If you've ever daydreamed or fantasized, anytime you just kind of let your mind wander, I wonder if you've ever had this experience. You're talking to somebody and you can see their lips moving, but you're elsewhere in your mind and you have no idea what they're saying, or you just kind of hear womp, womp, womp like the Peanuts teacher. You're not really picking up the words. In those experiences as well, you're in a natural trance state. Anytime you do something creative, you're actually coming from your subconscious mind. We're going to talk in a little while about the properties of the conscious and subconscious, but your subconscious is your creative mind. So any artistic types, when you're creating music or you're writing or you're inventing something, you're actually coming from your subconscious. You're not thinking your way through it. It's just coming from some deeper well of creativity within you. Anytime you get absorbed in an activity, so if there's something where you get so engaged, so focused, that time just loses all meaning. A minute could feel like an hour could feel like a minute, somebody could come into the room and you wouldn't even notice they were there. The internet is perfect for this. If you've ever gone down the internet wormhole, you think you've been on for 10 minutes, but actually an hour has passed, that too is a natural trance state. If you've ever gotten emotionally involved in a book or a movie, our subconscious is the emotional mind, so anytime we find ourselves getting teary over the sad commercial, we're actually tapping into our subconscious. If you do any sort of yoga or meditation, you've been in a trance state. The dead man's pose at the end of yoga where people are just kind of mellowed out. Or if you've ever done anything that begins with close your eyes and take a few nice deep breaths. So any creative visualization is actually utilizing hypnosis. They're just not calling it that. And when you're falling asleep, you actually pass through a natural trance state every single night of your life. So all that's happening in hypnosis is your brainwave levels are slowing down. So we start out in beta. Right now you're in a beta state likely, so you're awake and alert and aware. And delta is the sleep state. But in between those two states are alpha and theta, which is where hypnosis and meditation take place. So as you're falling asleep, your brainwave levels naturally slow down from beta into alpha and then theta and then eventually down into delta. So if you've ever been falling asleep and you're not quite asleep yet, but you're having kind of weird dreamy thoughts, that's actually a low theta state, that little place where you're just hovering above sleep. And that's what some people experience in my chair, that deep, relaxed, dreamlike place. And so those are natural trance states. You can see you've actually been in a hypnotic state many, many times. You might not have been barking like a dog when it happened, but it was hypnosis nonetheless. So what's the difference between hypnosis and hypnotherapy? Well, the therapy part kind of gives it away. Hypnosis is just putting somebody into that altered state of trance. Hypnotherapy is using hypnosis, using that altered state, to help a client to understand themselves more deeply or overcome an obstacle. So we're going to look at some of the common uses of hypnosis. Now there's a lot more than appear on this slide. I almost feel like hypnosis is one of these things that everybody could use. I could just go door to door. You need hypnosis, let me in and we'll figure out why. But these are some of the common ones. So a lot of people are familiar with the use of hypnosis for habit control, weight reduction, smoking cessation, that sort of thing. But I also work on more serious addictions with hypnosis. So I've worked in heroin addiction, meth addiction, alcoholism, as well as addictions like pornography, gambling, and the internet. And so you can work well in addiction with hypnosis. Sleep disorders. This is huge. 1 in 5 people have a sleep disorder of one type or another in the course of their lives. And so this is a major problem. And it just tends to get worse if not addressed. And so whether it's helping a person get to sleep more easily, shut their mind off, stay asleep, get good quality sleep, hypnosis can be used to achieve all of that. Now, one of the very first uses of hypnosis was pain management. So way back in the day, before there was such thing as anesthetic, hypnosis was used to create an anesthetic effect. And there are thousands of documented cases, like people having amputations, for example, where they had no pain control other than the hypnosis and they felt nothing. So when you take time to consider that, really think about that, if somebody can block out the pain that must surely have existed, having a leg removed without anesthetic, using the power of their mind, we have an incredible capacity within our minds to shift what it is we feel, to change our perceptions. So some of the more modern day uses of hypnosis for pain management would include birthing, helping people with both dental pain and dental anxiety, and just general uses of hypnosis. Now, hypnosis can also be used to enhance healing and to work on anything anxiety related. And anxiety disorders are one of my favorite areas to work on. And so I've done a lot of work with post-traumatic stress disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, fears and phobias, including social phobia, performance anxiety, panic attacks, that sort of thing. Now, one of the reasons why I really love working in the area of anxiety disorders is because we're only born with 2 natural fears. Do you know what they are? They are the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. So everything else that we become fearful about, we learn to become fearful about. We didn't come into the world that way. We have some experience or we're exposed to some messaging which teaches us to be fearful. So one of the reasons why hypnosis is really good for addressing anxiety is because we can trace back in hypnosis to where a fear originated and help a person resolve it. Now, I just want to back up for a second. A lot of other therapies, the way they address anxiety is they'll give people tools to be able to help them when they're going into an anxious state. And this may sound really naive, but my approach is, well, why don't we just eliminate the anxiety? So it's really quite exciting what hypnosis can do for people who have anxiety because they think they have to be medicated or do some breathing exercise to get through it, but we can actually rid them of it entirely. Hypnosis can also be used for physical issues, getting rid of migraines, reducing burn, lowering high blood pressure, that sort of thing. And so it sounds like it's for people with problems. But as I said, hypnosis is available for everybody and can be used on a variety of different goals. I work with students to improve their study skills. I work with athletes to help them perform better at sports. And performance is a big thing overall. Public speaking is the #1 fear amongst men and women, and hypnosis can be great for anything performance related. So as you can see, there's a variety of different uses of hypnosis, and again, there's more than this. Now, one of the reasons why hypnosis makes such a great career is because there's so many different ways you can use it. A lot of the people who look into my course are already trained in a particular area or have some kind of background, whether it's their own life experience or their education or a practice of some type, that they can blend with hypnosis. So for example, I had a student look into my course who is a nutritionist, and she was looking at how she could provide both nutritional information for people, but also help them on the psychological blocks that keep them from taking weight off. I've had counselors and social workers take my program. They got into their line of work because they really had a sincere desire to help people, but what they found is that the tools that they were trained in were fairly limited, or the bureaucracy at the places that they worked were limited as far as how much they could help people. So for example, one of my students wanted to work in addiction, so she became a social worker thinking that she was going to be able to help rid people of their addictions. But her job was essentially to hand out clean needles to street people. And so she was a bit disillusioned because she thought getting into social work she'd actually help them eliminate the addiction. She's able to do that with hypnosis. So if you have a particular interest, so for example, let's say you're a sports enthusiast, or maybe you're a musician, or maybe you have your own personal experience with mental disorder or what have you. Your life experience, your training, the education that you already have, the skills that you already possess could help you to find a niche that you really can offer something unique in. So one of the things, as I said, that I really love about hypnosis is it blends beautiful with other modalities. It can be used for so many different types of issues or problems that there's really no limit to how you could be using hypnosis to make a practice that's really unique, something that nobody else is offering. Okay, so how does it all work? Well, the idea is that we've got two parts to our mind, your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. And I use the analogy of an iceberg to describe the mind because we're aware of the little part above the surface of the water. But there's all this mass beneath the water that we're not aware of, and that's the part that sinks the ship. So we're going to look more closely first at the conscious mind. And so this is the little part above the water, and it represents only about 5 to 10% of your potential mind power. And we're going to look at these qualities a little more deeply in the upcoming slides, but just so you know, your conscious mind is your logical mind, it's your short-term memory, and it's where willpower comes from. And again, it's only 5 to 10% of your potential mind power, which means that only 5 to 10% of your choices and behaviors are actually being driven by your logical mind. Okay, so again, let's look at the qualities of the conscious mind a little bit more closely. So first off, as I said, it's your logical mind. So everybody who comes to see me knows what they should be doing, but doing it is quite another thing. So for example, every smoker knows all the health risks associated with smoking. You'd pretty much have to live under a rock to not know that. However, that doesn't mean that it's easy for them to just quit smoking. They still find themselves struggling with willpower, struggling with cravings, having that shaky feeling if they don't smoke. Every weight loss client who comes to see me knows more than the average person about diet and nutrition and exercise because they've essentially been studying it for a lifetime. But again, knowing something in your rational mind is not enough to be able to make a change necessarily out there in your behavior. Every client with OCD who comes to see me knows that they don't have to wash their hands 50 times a day. It's actually painful to do so. They don't have to keep checking the iron over and over and over. And yet knowing that in that little 5 to 10% of their mind that is logical doesn't stop them from having the compulsion or the anxiety if they try to avoid that behavior. The conscious mind is also your short-term memory. And what this means is that information stays in your conscious mind for 24 to 48 hours. So most of the behaviors that we're engaging in, most of the problems that clients come to see me about have been hanging around for longer than 24 to 48 hours. So to understand why we engage in certain behaviors or what beliefs we have within ourselves that cause us to maintain those behaviors, we need to get into the long-term memory. When somebody is working with a client only from the conscious mind perspective, they're looking in the top filing cabinet drawer for the thing that is stored in the bottom filing cabinet drawer. In other words, there's no point talking to somebody in the conscious state about why their problem started or where it stemmed from. Again, they may have conscious awareness of it, but they also may not. I've had clients who have come in and they said, I've got this phobia, or I've got insomnia, or I've got this anxiety, and I have no idea where it stems from. And they feel really frustrated because they're logical, reasonable, rational, smart, intelligent people, and yet they cannot get a handle on this particular thing that they're grappling with. And then I put them in hypnosis, and we access their long-term memory, and they have insight and clarity around why a particular problem is happening for them, why a particular issue keeps coming up. I want to tell you a story just to illustrate this. I had a client who came to see me who had a belly button phobia. I thought it was a prank phone call when she first called. It sounded really strange. So the problem was she couldn't touch her belly button, couldn't wear anything with a waistband, no sexual contact, couldn't bathe that area. And then she's out in public and she saw somebody else's belly button exposed and had a full-blown panic attack and had to go home. And then sometime later, she's looking through the TV channels, saw nudity on TV, had to shut the TV down, another panic attack. And she would get anxious just seeing the remote because you never know what might be on TV if you push one of the buttons. So she was actually becoming agoraphobic. There was so much anxiety about the possibility of seeing a belly button that she was having difficulty leaving her house. She did almost weekly therapy for about a year without any results. So she called me because she figured she might have some repressed sexual trauma that was causing this phobia. Now, first off, I want to say I never make any assumption about what might be causing a person's problem. The subconscious is the creative mind, as we'll discuss in a little while. And what that means is that people can create memories, false memories. If I took her back to the sexual trauma that's responsible for her issue, she could very well make up an experience. So I'm very careful about how I help a person understand what's impacted on them. I also never take a person back to relive anything that they've experienced before. I figure if somebody has been traumatized, why the heck would I traumatize them again? So my approach and what I teach my students is not about taking a person back into their worst experiences and having them relive them. It's really about understanding how your experiences have impacted on you so that we can remove that emotional charge that still exists. So, having said that, in the case of this client, we traced back what was responsible for her belly button issue, and what she went back to was being 2 years old. She's sitting in the bathtub playing with her belly button, and her mom, who was in the room, said, "Oh, you don't want to unscrew that or your legs are going to drop off." And that was it. I'll pause for a second so you can laugh. Now, my client was kind of irritated. She said to me, I am becoming agoraphobic. It's not because my mom told me a joke when I was 2 years old. But I addressed the problem, and a week later when I checked in with her, all of her symptoms were gone. So this is why I say sometimes clients come in with no idea where their problem stems from. Or, in her case, because they have huge symptoms, they figure there must be some huge cause, and they're frustrated because if it's that big, I should remember it, and if I don't remember it, it must be something really traumatic, really terrifying. But the subconscious mind, as we'll find out, processes information very differently than the logical mind does. And so again, one of the wonderful things about using hypnosis is when somebody's really stuck and they don't know why they're stuck, we can trace back and uncover and address whatever the event was, whatever the experience was that caused them to become stuck in the first place. Okay. Conscious mind is also where your willpower comes from. So this is why it's so hard to make yourself change something. You're using only 5 to 10% of your mind at most. So again, whenever a client comes to see me, there's an internal conflict going on. 5 to 10% of them would like to be a better public speaker, like to take the weight off, like to quit smoking, like to not have to check the iron so many times. But if the other 90% has a different agenda or belief that's driving their behavior, it's going to be really challenging to make a change that lasts for any length of time. So in order to create real and lasting change, obviously, we've got to get into that other 90%. And so let's look at the other 90%. Let's have a good look at the subconscious mind. All right, so the subconscious mind, and again, we'll look at all these qualities upcoming. It is illogical, it is creative, it's your emotional mind. Its job essentially is to protect you, to keep you safe. It is your long-term memory, as I already mentioned. It contains all of your beliefs, and basically its job is just to respond to or act on whatever happens to be stored within the subconscious mind. And again, just to reiterate, it represents 90 to 95% of your potential mind power. In other words, 90 to 95% of your behaviors, your choices, your attitudes are driven by what is stored within your subconscious mind. Okay, so let's look a little bit closer at the attributes of the subconscious mind. Now, the subconscious is completely illogical. It has no reasoning power whatsoever. So, for example, it doesn't know the difference between past and present. How the subconscious works, it's basically a big storage system. It stores away all of your life experiences, sort of categorize them. I think of it like having a filing system in your mind. So, you get bit by a dog at 2 years old, and it stores away in the file called dog all of the fear and trauma and pain that happened when you got bit. Now you're 32 years old, you hear a dog bark in the distance, your subconscious very quickly accesses the dog file and goes, oh my God, pain, trauma, fear, and you find yourself having a panic attack because you heard a dog bark. And so it doesn't necessarily know that where you are in your life now, you know the difference between a safe dog and an unsafe dog. You know not to touch the rabid, growling dog, that actually is a sound of a dog in the distance and can't hurt you at all. It doesn't have any concept of good, bad, healthy, unhealthy, safe, unsafe, past, present. It just refers to past event to know how to deal with whatever the current event is. It also doesn't understand consequences. So the subconscious operates on the pleasure principle. What do I need right now to feel good? But it has no idea of cause and effect. So for example, comfort eating. One of the very first messages that we pick up about food is that food feels good. You know, we get held and nursed or cuddled and fed, and our mind links things together. It operates by association. You know, if we get fed enough times in a way that feels good, then we link food equals a good feeling down in the subconscious. So now you feel stressed out by something and your subconscious goes, well, have food, that'll help. It thinks that it's supporting you in feeling better. I will eat and that will make me feel better because that's what my history of eating has done for me. But it doesn't know that if you eat when you're not actually hungry, you're going to gain weight, and then you're going to be angry at yourself, and then you're going to pick on yourself, and then you're going to feel self-conscious, and you're not going to like dressing or going out. So it doesn't understand all the pros and cons of your behavior. It just picks one that it thinks, in its charming, illogical way, is going to be useful to you. The subconscious is also your emotional mind. It's the seat of all of your emotions. And what this means is that if we're dealing with an emotional issue such as anger, depression, anxiety, a fear, a phobia, we have to access the subconscious mind. The conscious mind can't control emotions. You know, there's no point saying to somebody in their logical state, well, cheer up, don't be depressed. It's like if your cell phone breaks down and you go to a shoe store and say, my cell phone's broken, fix it. They go, we do shoes, we don't do cell phones. So the conscious mind does logic and reason. It doesn't do emotion. If we need emotion to be managed or worked through better, we got to go to the part of the mind that generates it. We got to go to the subconscious. The subconscious is also protective. So again, its primary function is to keep you safe at all cost. But again, being illogical, it sometimes attempts to keep you safe from something that isn't actually threatening to you. So it can perceive a threat in the environment when there isn't any. So the example I used before of having a panic attack because you hear a dog bark in the distance, what's worse for you, the panic attack or the sound of a dog? The panic attack is actually more threatening to you than the sound of a dog in the distance, but the subconscious, because it refers to that past event and causes you to, panic in order to protect yourself, actually thinks that it's serving you. And so it can perceive threats in the environment, and it can give you coping mechanisms to help you out that are actually bad for you. So, the subconscious is constantly picking up information, and then it simply responds to whatever is stored within. It refers to that information or those experiences to know how to handle the present. So the big question is, what the heck is stored in there? So we're going to look now at how your belief systems are formed and why you do the crazy things you do. Okay, so how your belief systems are formed. Now, up until 2 or 3 years old, all you have is subconscious mind. So everything that you experience, everything you're told, everything you're exposed to is accepted as fact. The subconscious does not reason, so it can't identify, well, this is true and that's false. It just takes in everything. And this is Mother Nature's way of helping us to learn all of the things that we need to learn in those first few years of our lives. And so these messages that we pick up form our early belief system. Now, I say we're picking up messages. Some of those messages are direct, things people actually say to you. Your room is really messy, you're a slob. Okay, that's a message that goes straight into your mind. Now you've got a belief that I'm a slob. Later on, you can't seem to get a handle on all of your paperwork. It's all over the house. Well, that's because your subconscious is still responding to the old message, I'm a slob, and making it real. It just acts on whatever's stored within. Some of the messages, however, are indirect. So a person doesn't have to say anything to us. We observe our parents, for example, and we can learn a lot about a man's role, a woman's role, sexuality, communication, how to fight, just by observing our parents. A person can make a look, and we can form all kinds of opinions about ourselves, about the world, about everything just based on a look. And they might have just been smelling something bad. It might have had nothing to do with us. And so even though not every message that we receive is a direct message, those indirect messages still have an enormous impact on us. Now, when we're little like this, 2 or 3, we are egocentric. Kids find it easy to make everything about themselves. we don't have the capacity when we're really young to look at those messages we receive. Let's say we have a parent who just lost a job, who's in a really bad mood, comes home raging, chucks the cat across the room, smacks our mother, and then yells at us. We don't have the capacity or the life experience at 2 years old to go, oh, perhaps this person is struggling with their own issues. Maybe they have anger management problems. Maybe this person is dealing with their own frustration. Oh no, we blame ourselves. If I were a better person, if I were more this or that, maybe that person would treat me better. And then we start to feel responsible that we're somehow making other people do what it is they do. So up until 2 or 3 years old, we're just taking in all those messages from the world around us, even erroneous messages, because we don't have the capacity to put things in perspective at that time. And again, that is stored in your subconscious and you respond to it later. So if you think about the types of messages that you were exposed to, these things could very well still be stored within your subconscious mind and directing your behavior. So back to my belly button client. She was told if you touch your belly button, your legs are going to drop off. And it makes no sense to the rational mind. I mean, she did a year's worth of counseling. If that had come up in counseling, it didn't in an entire year because it was tucked way away in the subconscious mind. But if it had come up, probably both her and the counselor would have said, well, that's really stupid, and completely dismissed it. So sometimes people, they think something is too minor, or it doesn't make any sense, or it's something I've dealt with 1,000,000 years ago, but it can still be tucked away in the subconscious. Just because we process something rationally, we understand it consciously, doesn't necessarily mean that on a subconscious level we've dealt with it. Okay, so up until 2 or 3, we can't tell right from wrong. If I told you that that green dot there was a triangle, you would just believe me. You take in whatever messages you're given. However, after 2 or 3, we start to develop the logical mind. And what this means is we can now filter out misinformation. So we get this little filter that exists between the conscious and subconscious mind. So how do you respond when I tell you that that green dot there is a triangle? So when I say this is a triangle, it hits your filter and it bounces out. You probably thought something like, she's crazy. No, it isn't. That's a circle. She's wrong. So the good news is your logical mind is working and it's going to keep you safe from misinformation. You'll be able to just bounce it out when you hear it, right? Wrong. The problem is filters have holes in them, and at various times in our lives the holes just open up and information or misinformation slips through and gets into the subconscious just like you were a year old again. So we pick up everything we're exposed to in those first couple years of our lives, but we're not safe once we hit 3. There are still times when we're open to the suggestions in our environment even after we mature. And so when does this happen? When are we taking messaging into the subconscious? It happens when we're emotional or overwhelmed. So remember, your subconscious is your emotional mind. We cannot be emotional and rational at the same time. So anytime you're really nervous, anxious, hurt, jealous, whatever it happens to be, whenever you're in a highly emotional state, that filter is wide open. So whatever messages you're picking up from the world around you are getting stored in your subconscious mind at that time. We're also open to suggestion when we're under the influence or when we're under anesthetic. If you're doing drugs or alcohol, your logical mind is not present at the time. We're not rational and reasonable. We're coming from our creative emotional mind. So anytime you are under the influence, that filter's open, and again, the messages in your environment are getting stored in your subconscious. And interestingly, this also happens under the effects of anesthetic. So here's a little interesting aside. The subconscious mind cannot be anesthetized. It doesn't even go to sleep. When you're under the effect of anesthetic, your logical mind is affected and your body is affected, but not the subconscious. They've actually been able to take people who had surgery, were under anesthetic, put them in hypnosis, and they were able to recall things that were said or done during the surgery while they were out that could be verified by other people in the room. So we're still recording information even under the effect of anesthetic. Now, when we're around somebody whose opinion matters to us or somebody we want to impress, that filter is wide open too, which is why peer pressure can influence people so much. If you were walking down the street and some bum who just peed on himself said, "You're never going to amount to anything," you'd probably be like, "Whatever, you just peed on yourself," and it's not going to affect you. But if it came from a teacher or your best friend or a boyfriend or a parent, somebody who matters to you, it gets into your subconscious and later on affects your performance. And when we're around authorities, that filter is wide open. We're taught from the time we're little to respect the big people. They know what they're talking about. And even when we become big people ourselves, our filter can still open around people who we give respect to or who we place in a position of authority. This, by the way, is why placebo works. Somebody goes to the doctor, they put that person in a place of authority. They've got all these, certificates on their wall that say they know what they're talking about. They have the impressive white coat and the stethoscope. And when the doctor gives the person a sugar pill and says this medicine's going to make you feel better, that statement goes straight into their subconscious, and sure enough, the person gets better because they accepted in that belief that they were going to. The doctor didn't do anything. The pill didn't do anything. It was the subconscious that created the healing just by a belief that was accepted at the time. And we also give ourselves messages. Do you have a voice inside your head? Now, if you're sitting there going, what voice is she talking about? I don't have a voice. It's that voice. And some of us have several voices. So here's another question for you. Is that voice super friendly and supportive and encouraging, or can it be downright mean? So, anytime you're in a natural trance state, anytime you're under the influence, anytime that you are emotional or overwhelmed, anytime that you're around somebody you perceive to be in a position of authority, the things you are telling yourself are programming your own mind. So that's something to think about. We're taking in messages from the people around us, the situations around us, but we're giving them to ourselves as well. Okay, so what does this all mean? Well, at this point, it should be fairly obvious. If you want something consciously, but your subconscious has a different opinion, belief, agenda, desire, who's going to win? It's down to simple math. Is it going to be 5% or is it going to be 95%? Of course, the subconscious mind always wins. So if you consciously would like to believe I have good solid, strong self-worth, but you've picked up messages that you're worthless, guess what? It's going to be really hard to have the level of confidence and self-esteem that you want. You might say to yourself, I'd like to exercise more. I know that it's really important to have a regular exercise regime. But if you've picked up a message you're lazy, it's going to be really hard to get your butt up off the couch. You might tell yourself smoking is unhealthy. It's time for me to get rid of this disgusting habit. But if you have a subconscious belief, smoking helps me relax, again, it's going to be really hard to work against your subconscious because it's just bigger and stronger. If you say to yourself, I really want to be able to speak in front of a crowd, this is going to help me move ahead in my business, this is going to help me to feel more comfortable in social situations, but you embarrassed yourself back in grade 3 when you got up and made a mistake and the teacher called you out and the kids laugh. If you've got a belief, I'm going to make a fool of myself, guess what? Your subconscious is going to keep you out of any situation where you might be under the spotlight because it doesn't want you to embarrass yourself again. So why hypnosis? Well, in hypnosis, we have access to the subconscious mind. We open up the filters. If I just sit across from my client and say, well, smoking's bad for you, just stop. They're not going to go, oh my God, that is brilliant. Thank you so much. That is the advice I was looking for. I'm done, right? They know that. I'm preaching to the converted. We got to talk to the subconscious. And in hypnosis, we have the ability to do that. We can also identify and change beliefs that are stored within. My belly button client. We could have done 1 million counseling sessions and 1 million hypnosis sessions on just touch it, go ahead, touch it. But what she really needed to hear, believe it or not, was this is physically impossible. If it were true that we could lose our legs touching our belly buttons, how are people getting belly button piercings? We would literally be a society of people in wheelchairs. Now, logically, her mind was probably going, okay, this is really stupid. I can't even believe I'm paying you for this session. But her subconscious is going, oh my God, that's true. Oh, whoa, well, this changes everything. Okay, we can touch it then. Sorry about that whole not touching it thing. So by being able to access the subconscious, we can present a different way of looking at things. We can present a counter-argument to what the subconscious believes and change the beliefs that's stored within. We can get the subconscious and conscious mind to believe the same thing. A lot of what I'm doing sometimes is taking what the person already knows in their logical mind and just dropping it down into that deeper part of their mind. If both the conscious and subconscious know that it's okay to touch your belly button or the dog does not pose a threat, then obviously change is going to be much easier when you've got those two parts of your mind in agreement. So, just a last little tidbit to leave you with. There's a study done by a Dr. Barrios in the mid-'80s and published in American Health magazine. And according to his study, and I agree with these statistics from my 15 years in practice, hypnotherapy is 97% effective after 6 sessions. So when you think about that, that's really great results. When I train my students, I train them to really be able to identify the patterns, the beliefs, the experiences that are still impacting on the client. And I don't let my clients not get results. If my clients are not getting results within 2 or 3 sessions, I'm moving on to uncovering anything additional that we need to know or understand to move them forward. So this is the kind of success rate that I get with my clients. Now, some clients, their story is a little bit more complex. Some people need a little bit more time to warm up to telling me everything. They come in a little guarded, a little closed, and part of what we're doing is developing rapport and getting them comfortable. So I don't want you to be attached to that. This is what you're going to get with every single client. There are actually some clients who get results in the first 1 or 2 sessions and other ones who might require 8, 9, 10. But when you think of it, it's still relatively quick therapy when you compare it to a lot of other forms of therapy. So do you want to get better results with clients? Is what I'm telling you here in this video resonating with you? A lot of my students say, I've been trained in psychology, I was trained in counseling, I was trained in social work. I have an RN in a class right now who said, I wish I would have known this when I was seeing patients. She's retired now. If you're listening to this going, this makes sense, and you would like to get great results with your clients, well, train to be a hypnotherapist. I teach in person in beautiful Victoria, BC, but I also have an online program that really is more of a hybrid program than a pure online program because it requires that you do in-person portions. So the online program is split into 3 sections: basic hypnosis, hypnoanalysis, and then electives, where you get to personalize your training and learn about subjects that are of interest to you, applications for hypnosis that you're excited about. And after each of those 3 sections, we meet for 4 days. I do travel a bit, so maybe there will be an in-person section that's closer to where you live. And we cover and practice the material so that you really embody it. I also make sure that I am accessible to my online students. Every 2 or 3 weeks we do what I call office hours, where you can call in, you can ask questions, you can connect with myself and your classmates so that you have sort of a mastermind group that you can attend to help support you while you're going through the material. And I'd like to offer a free trial of my program. If you go down below this video, you'll see a box where you can sign up for a free trial. And I'd like to offer you the first unit of my material for a month for free so that you can go in and check it out and see what you think. There's no obligation for you to sign up for the program. I won't be hounding you to take the training. But I know that it's a big investment and a big commitment. And so if you'd like to check out the program, you're welcome to below. Thank you for taking time to listen to this video. I hope it's given you some ideas as to why we do what we do and how hypnosis can be so effective in changing that. And I'd love to see you in class. Take care.